What's going on, everybody? I'm Jason with Tennessee Mountain Homestead, and as you might have guessed by the thumbnail, we're still dealing with this muffler thing. So stay tuned and I'm going to explain what's going on. Alright, so this is the muffler setup, and so far we've had issues with flames coming out of the front of this thing after extended periods of higher RPMs. As some of you who follow along may recall, at first I thought it was a rich condition from the carburetor, which I tried jetting it down and it seemed to help. I also did a bypass for the fuel pump and that seemed to help because there was definitely extra fuel being pushed through the system. But that didn't ultimately fix it. As some of you may remember from last episode, I got all scientific and stuff and I made this plate that went over the front of the muffler to prevent air from going down inside of it. And that definitely also seemed to help. It did. I think by keeping oxygen out of the muffler and only the exhaust was able to escape. But it still caught fire again after that. So after that caught fire the other night again, and I wasn't even going fast, with the plate over the front of it, I started really getting frustrated, and I came to finally realize that what's happening is it's just getting very, very hot inside this thing because it might not be rated for such a large cubic centimeter motor, much less a 2-cylinder. So I'm thinking that the packing inside this muffler is what is catching fire. I bought this muffler on eBay and it's a stainless steel muffler. It seems to be well constructed. It wasn't the cheapest muffler, and it definitely was not the most expensive muffler. I'll put a picture of the description of this thing, but it does say right on the eBay listing that it's rated for ATV, UTV, street bikes even, stuff like that. So I never would have thought that it could not handle a 2-cylinder lawnmower engine. I also never would have imagined that whatever they put in these things for packing, it's probably some sort of fiberglass, that it would be flammable. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me, but I guess it is what it is. So, we're going to try to fix this thing. Yesterday, I took out this baffle, or they call it a decibel killer, or silencer, whatever. It's a piece of stainless steel, and it fits inside the muffler, and it faces this way. It has an end cap on it, it's solid on the end, and it had way less holes than this before. It had 3, 6, 9, 12, I think it had 18 holes, and they were about 1/4 inch. And it seemed to me that this thing was blocking a lot of the exhaust, causing a restriction, and it was glowing cherry red. So I took this out, and I enlarged the stock holes to about, I'd say, 5/16, maybe a little bit more, with a step drill bit. And then that wasn't even good enough because of my hard-headedness. I also added a bunch of extra 1/4 inch holes. So now you can see it has a lot more holes. And I put it back in like that. And then it still glowed red, but it didn't seem to catch fire. I couldn't get it to catch fire, but it was just way too loud. Currently, as you can see, obviously, this is not in there. It's just straight through right now. There's no restrictions, no nothing. But unfortunately, it is way too loud. It's cool. Maybe I'll crank it up for you so you can hear it, but it's probably not going to come through on the microphone or over your device or your TV. So, you know, we'll still fire it up, but we need to do something different. So being stainless steel, I don't have a TIG welder. And how would I close this up? Because it has this flare that fits inside the muffler perfect, and when it's compressed onto the exhaust pipe, that presses up against this and wedges it so it can't move or vibrate. So I need to reuse this piece. I also want to extend this longer and drill more holes in it to distribute the heat through the muffler more than just this little bit. I want it to be maybe another 3 inches past this long. So what I did was I cut the cap off of this. Now it's hollow. So I have these electrical fittings And this is 1¼ inch EMT. It's a steel set screw coupling. So this is what one looks like with the set screws, and you put this over a piece of conduit. Well, anyway, it goes on there, and you tighten down these screws, and the next piece continues. Well, it just so happens that 1¼ inch EMT is the exact same diameter as this piece. So I took the screws out, obviously. I took a file, and I filed out the dimple in the middle so that it would fit. And now I'm going to be able to not only cover up all the holes I drilled, but I'm going to be able to add a piece on here. And this is steel. Both of these pieces are regular mild steel, so I'll be able to weld it here. And then I'll weld a cap on the front of this, obviously, and then, like I said, I'll drill a bunch of small holes in this thing, and hopefully that'll help solve our issue. The first thing I'm going to do is take this muffler off, and I'll show you the inside of it. I've just got regular galvanized tie wire holding on this exhaust header wrap. These are the springs that come with the kit, and they're pretty stout. You got to use pliers to pull them. Here's some of our header wrap that we had to cover that little piece. And now, it just slips on like this. All right, I'm debating on if I'm going to take this wrap off of this thing and drill out. There's 3 rivets on each end, and I'm sure that this would just come apart and give me access to the internals where there's a steel mesh. I'll put a picture, and where that packing stuff lives. There's a steel mesh internally on this, and there's the outside skin of this muffler, and in between there's some sort of a packing, and we know it catches fire. We know it's flammable. But I think what I'm going to try to do, like I said, is make my new piece first, so it's longer than this little piece was, with more holes, so it diffuses the exhaust heat and transfers the heat through the muffler more, if that makes sense, before I go taking this thing apart and trying to remove all that packing. And if it still catches fire with this modification, it's easy enough to take this thing back off, and then I'll take the packing off if it's a problem. Okay, so I've removed the finish from this coupling, and I ground down the raised areas where the screws used to thread into. And I removed the finish off of this piece of conduit, and now I have my extension. So now I need to figure out how long I want this thing. Well, inside the muffler, the mesh starts about here, and it ends about here. So this is going to sit in there about like that. So I want to make this thing just a little bit, end a little bit before the end of the mesh. So right about there, I guess. I'm going to cut that off. We're going to weld this mild steel to the coupling. I'm going to attach this coupling to this piece of stainless steel, the stock baffle, with probably 3 rivets. And that'll hold it from being able to be launched off out of the pipe. So that's what's up next. And then we're going to weld a cap on the end of the pipe so the noise can't travel straight out. Alright, so I'm going to try to give you guys a video and try to catch the sound. This is the muffler without anything in it, just the packing. There's no baffle, no decibel killer. So here's what it sounds like without that in there. It's cold. That was a cold start. bugged out because I forgot to turn on the fuel pump. Anyway, let's get back to fixing this thing and make it quieter. All right, so I got this extension welded up. As you can see, the stock factory piece is still in here. This is my end cap, and what I'm gonna do, it was just easier to weld it around on this thing, and I'm just now gonna cut this and shave off the unnecessary pieces, and I'll have my solid end cap. After that, we're gonna go ahead and figure out how many and what diameter holes we're gonna drill in this thing. I got the stock baffle riveted, as you can see, to this new piece of extension, this coupling and this piece of conduit. We got the front blocked off. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to drill a pattern of holes, and we're going to start light, and if we have to work our way up, we will. But I'm going to go ahead and go with this. These are the stock pattern holes that were in the coupling, and 2 of them in the baffle already kind of line up. So we're going to go with this pattern and continue it forward, and we'll be back in a minute and we'll show you the finished product, and then we'll put it in the muffler and see what happens. Rather than just drill a whole bunch of holes blind in this thing, not knowing how many we need, we kind of took a step back and thought about it. So this is the stock muffler for the Predator 670. Now, all this thing is, it's got 2 entries in it, for one from each cylinder, where we cut that off to use the flanges. This exit is only a 1 3/8 inch diameter exit pipe. And what this pipe is, it's the same as this basically. It's welded here, and it just sticks down in about 2/3 of the way in with a cap on it, just like this. And it's got a bunch of what looks like, if I look down in there, a bunch of slits or holes in it. Same concept. So the factory figures this only needs an 1 3/8 diameter hole for an exit on the exhaust. Now we're drilling into this baffle with a 7/32 drill bit, and I'm gonna let Stefan take over for a second and explain how we came up with that math and how many holes we need to drill.
To find the size of the holes we need for the drill bit and for the muffler, I used the formula A equals pi r squared. So that means that I had to divide the area of the diameter of the drill bit by 2, and then multiply it by itself, and then times 3.14. I did the same for the muffler, and then I divided the muffler size by the answer I got for the drill bit, which is basically 1/26 of an inch. I have 1.5 inches roughly for the muffler size, and then that comes up with about 39 holes that we need to drill.
Show your work. Ain't no calculators around here. We do math the long way. All right, so getting back to it, we figured we need, this is our pattern. This was already in the coupling, so I went with that. And then I added 3 holes on a 5/8 center. So that gives us 7 holes in this row. We need 39 holes, but we can't do that with this pattern. We're gonna go ahead and just do 6 rows of 7 and make 42 holes. That'll be what, 3 holes more over? It's not gonna hurt nothing. And we're gonna start with that, see what happens. All right, one more thing. Rather than just drilling a bunch of haphazard holes, 42 of them to be exact, we figured out that the lines need to be 13/16 of an inch apart this way. And then you can see we made a bunch of hash marks where we need to drill. Doesn't need to be super perfect, because after all, it's just hot gases escaping through these holes. But hopefully this solves our problem. I'm going to drill these holes, and then we're going to see what happens with the muffler. Here's the finished product. This is our new baffle. And hopefully this will distribute the heat more evenly inside the muffler and quiet it back down. Let's go put it on. All right, our new baffle's back inside. Let's crank this thing up and see what it sounds like. It's a lot better. do. Alright, muffler's back on, exhaust wrap's back on. I'm going to take this thing down the road, but one more thing worth mentioning I did yesterday was I added this piece of heat shielding to the cowl. It's just held on by a couple of screws, and this came from the stock factory Predator 670 muffler.
Wait, it's going down the road.
Because before, even with the exhaust wrap on the muffler, this cowling got hot enough that where you put your hand on it, it'd be uncomfortable. And now that I put this heat shield on the inside, there's airspace between it, and now I can touch it after it's been running for a while and it's just fine. It's just warm. As you just saw, we caught fire again. Now, when I first crank it up and the engine's cool and the exhaust is probably as cool as it's going to be in its run cycle, I take off down the road and it runs okay. It stumbles a little bit at speed, the engine. I'm not sure if that's lean or rich. I don't know. Anyway, it never happens going that direction, and then I turn around about a quarter mile down the street and I come back, and about halfway back, when this thing probably reaches full temperature, is when it starts to spit the fire out the exhaust pipe. And I don't know if it's the packing, I don't know if it's the fuel. At this point, I just don't know what it is. So what we're going to do next, we're going to take the muffler back off, we're going to drill out the rivets, we're going to take the packing out of the thing, and I'm up in the air about if I'm going to stuff it with steel wool, because that'll probably burn too, or leave it with nothing, no packing. Now, it also seemed like it got louder from when I started it up, when we first put that new baffle in there, drove down the road. By the time I got back and backed it in the garage here, it sounded like the engine, like the exhaust was a lot louder, like it had just increased in decibel. Is that the packing burning away? I don't know. If anyone's watching this and has any kind of insight, please drop a comment. I'd really appreciate it. This is super frustrating. I just want to ride this thing around and have a good time. And this has become a major thorn. This thing has thrown a lot of salt in my game. Let's put it that way. So let's get this thing off and we'll see you soon. Just got the packing material out of that muffler, and just as I thought, it's definitely been burning and melting. It's hard like plastic right here, and it's brittle, and you can see where it's melted all through here. So this is definitely what was catching fire, and it was like this inside. You can see where it's gone away, where it's melted, and I guess the pieces of this were burning. So I don't know what to put back in it, if anything. It's going to maybe ping and make metallic sounds. I don't know. But we're going to try something. See you in a minute. I had this bag of steel wool on the shelf, And before I even attempt to put this in there, I haven't read a thing online, looked into this. But we're gonna see how it reacts with heat. Yeah, that's not gonna work out either. That's what's gonna happen to it inside that muffler. It's just gonna melt away. And look, it even catches fire because there's probably some kind of chemical on it from when they manufacture it. The muffler's put back together without the packing. The mesh is put back in there, and I used some brand new rivets and I clocked it so it wasn't in the same holes, because the other holes, they had some even fatter rivets that I don't have. Anyway, it's back together. Let's see what it sounds like, if it's not going to be way too loud. Not that bad. All right, I took it down the street like usual, quarter mile down, quarter mile back. When I got back in the driveway and revved it up, these little bits of metal came out of the muffler. These are the rivets that we used. So it's getting pretty hot to melt these little steel rivets. It's probably some really low quality metal. It is magnetic, it is steel, but we're gonna have to use something else for that. But anyways, no fire, obviously, no packing to burn. I think it's running lean. I'm gonna take the needle and emulsion tube and move the needle and enrichen the mixture on the needle a little, maybe a notch or two, because it breaks up at mid throttle. It's breaking up, and I don't think it's running rich. There's no smoke coming out of it. So we're gonna try that. And also, if you notice, we did not put the exhaust wrap back on this thing, but you can see where it's getting hot. Right there. I can feel the heat coming off this thing. But you can see how hot that gets with the discoloration. Anyway, we're going to do that, and we'll be back. That's going to be a wrap for today's video, guys. We got the muffler to quit burning up, to quit flaming, and we've just been messing around with the jetting. So the pilot jet, I think, needs to be richened now. I got the needle jet, the needle and an emulsion tube. I got that thing as lean as it'll go on the clip setting. But anyways, that'll be another video. I want to get this thing running like perfect. And I feel like I'm a long way from that. And acquiring needles and jets and all that stuff is a mystery to me. I found a place online I can get them, but you know, unless you pay the price, you ain't gonna have them for about a week in your hand. So with that, my name's Jason, Tennessee Mountain Homestead, and we'll see you on the next one.